Hi, I'm Samantha Johnson. This is Beyond the Game. Here's what's coming up. Heartbreak, grief and sadness. Brazil reacts to the Chapecoense plane crash. Now the focus turns to the moments leading up to that fatal moment where 71 people lost their lives. So what happens next? We speak to someone about how a club comes back after a tragedy. And child abuse allegations continue to engulf English football, with a Premier League giant accused of a cover-up. Families will never be the same again. Brothers and sons will never come home from a football match that was supposed to be the highlight of their careers. Brazil is in mourning after a plane carrying the Chapecoense football squad crashed in the mountains of Meddellin earlier this week. Lance Santos has the latest updates on a tragedy that has shocked the world.
The morning after the devastating night before.
Não dá para acreditar, ele falou comigo, me ligou ao último horário, antes do voo, pouco.
They should have been making their family members proud, representing their small town on the big stage. Instead, those close to them are now planning their funerals.
Notícia do acidente.
O coração está espedaçado. Estou sofrendo muito, é muito difícil. Eu jamais achei que eu fosse passar por esse momento.
As the investigators arrived in Meddellin to pick up the pieces, the details emerged of those killed make the accident even more painful. This video released by Brazilian media shows some of the Chapecoense players surprising their teammate Tiaguinho. Inside the card, his wife had written, "Congratulations, you are going to be a dad for the first time." Fans made the way to their stadium in Chapecoense to say goodbye to the team who brought them so much happiness. The club released a video on their YouTube page, The Eternal Champions, a tribute to the team who never played in their dream final. Investigators are still picking up the pieces from the crash site. Both black boxes have been located, and the investigation is now underway. The families who have had their lives torn will want answers. Did the pilot dump fuel in an act to save lives, or was the crash caused by air traffic controllers on the ground who failed to recognize just how dire the situation on board Flight 2933 was? Was the plane safe to fly, or was it pushed to its limit? The speculation will now continue to grow as the need for information and closure intensifies. What won't change is the fact that families will never see their loved ones again. And a 22-year-old father will never get the chance to meet his first child.
So for more now on how the events are developing in Brazil, I'm joined by Manuela Perino, who is a journalist in Rio de Janeiro. Manuela, thank you for joining Beyond the Game. We're a day on from this tragedy. How is Brazil coping with this?
Well, the country is still mourning the loss of this amazing team. And yesterday, Tuesday, President Temer declared 3 days of mourning. And basically, all the eyes are concentrated on Chapecoense, the town where the team was from. And they're already preparing for the funeral that will happen inside the arena of the team. Right now, there is a press conference happening in this moment where they're explaining how the bodies will return to Brazil and what will happen during the funeral. In this sense, we still don't know exactly when the bodies will arrive in Brazil. They're saying probably probably Friday, but we know that the identification of the body is still happening in Meddellin, and there is no clear answer on that.
Well, has there been any word from the Brazilian League about the support for the families of the victims?
Well, the Brazilian Football Association is supporting the families now. They give them 2 planes for the families to reach Medellin. Then the trip was canceled because the Colombian and Brazilian authority thought that it was not necessary for the family to get to Colombia because that if identification of the body is happening, is being done by fingerprint. But the Brazilian Football Federation said that they are at disposal of the family, whatever they need, they will be there to support them. There is great support also from all the other teams. The Las Palmeiras, which is the Brazilian championship, asked the federation to wear if they could wear the Chapecoense jersey in the last game, and every team has offered to lend their players to Chapecoense for them to be able to end the championship and to be able to play next year in the next year championship. And also the Brazilian Football Federation said that there is no question about Chapecoense will stay in Division A.
Okay, Manuela, thank you for speaking to us. Now, despite all the heartfelt messages and the outpouring of genuine sympathy, the lingering question is, how did this happen? Well, to help us to look at that, we have an expert in aviation safety, Mark Weiss. Mark, thank you for joining us again. Now, you told Beyond the Game that you didn't understand the pilot's reasoning for circling the plane. Since the show, has anything else become clearer to you as to why the pilot did what he did?
At this point, no, but let's keep some things in mind. Nobody wants to jump to conclusions as to what the cause was or could have been without really getting a handle on the facts. That's going to come through the investigation. And keep in mind that typically and generally, accidents don't happen from a single event, a single cause. It's usually a chain of events leading up to what we saw the other day, an accident of tragic proportions.
Well, from what you've seen and read so far, what's the most likely outcome as to why this crash probably happened? You just said it could have been, a chain of events. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, just hearing from the media of what may have transpired, here's the thinking and the logic that I'm going through. If they had some type of an electrical problem, and they went into a holding pattern to deal with that, to try and work through the problem, they would have, probably should have declared an emergency, number one, to deal with the problem. If they declared an emergency, they should have asked to go into the holding pattern to deal with that. But at the same time, who was flying the airplane, and were they distracted enough because of this problem to not recognize the fact that they were running low on fuel? I mean, I understand that they crashed about 18 miles from the airport. In aviation, somebody always has to be in charge. Fly the airplane. You aviate, navigate, and communicate. And flying an airplane, flying a commercial airliner, is a well-choreographed event. It's like a ballet. Everybody in the cockpit, and in fact the whole crew, everybody has a responsibility and a role to play. Now, when you get into a commercial airliner, you always think ahead of the airplane. What happens if? If there's a problem, how are we going to deal with this? And there's a very well-defined role of responsibilities.
Okay.
And the captain is always in charge.
Okay, well, sorry, final question. Could there be any blame towards the air traffic control? There were reports of them prioritizing another flight.
Very possibly, but then it also raises the questions of why didn't the pilots on the doomed aircraft raise the issue above where it was and declare an immediate emergency that we have to land because of fuel shortage. So it could be a combination of events. Again, not one single incident, not one single event leading to a crash.
All right, Mark, thank you very much. Well, unfortunately, the Chapecoense air disaster isn't the first one in footballing history. Other sporting clubs have been torn apart by similar tragedies throughout the years.
As the plane went down the runway, the engines had the similar effects to what had happened the first two attempts, and it went faster and faster, and I thought, well, we must be going to take off, but unfortunately we didn't, and from my point of view, I sat back. I don't know whether I had my head down or not, but luggage started to fall all around. And then, from my point of view, the plane appeared to stop. And the next second, the whole thing started to disintegrate and went dark, and I had the sensation of rolling round and round.
Well, staying with the Munich air disaster of 1958 that killed 8 Manchester United players, I'm joined now by Sam Peoples, who's written a number of blogs on what kind of effect the disaster had on Manchester. Sam, thank you for speaking to Beyond the Game. Now, as a football club, what kind of impact did this have on, on football, on matters on the pitch?
Well, Manchester United had to completely rebuild, and it was thanks to Jimmy Murphy, who was Man United's assistant manager at the time. He worked under Matt Busby. Obviously, Matt Busby had grave injuries in the disaster, but Jimmy Murphy took a team and basically used Man United's youth players and brought through relatively unknown players or completely unknown players and just did a makeshift team. And during the league that year, it was tough for Man United. We slipped to 9th, but we reached the FA Cup final.
Wow.
It was a miracle that we reached the final in that season, and we did lose the final, but it was the fact that this Man United team had survived. We won our first game back after the Munich air disaster 3-0, and it was at a time when everyone was in mourning. Manchester United managed to live on, and it's been embodied in the club ever since.
Oh, most definitely. Well, that's matters on the pitch, but what about off the field? I mean, how did it affect the community, the city of Manchester?
It was football at that time. It wasn't tribal. So in Manchester, there's two teams, Manchester United and Manchester City. Fans would regularly go to both games. It was a national mourning. It was a communal, almost a family loss. It was because back in those times, it was a case of the fans were a little bit closer to players. The players used to live in digs together. It wasn't a celebrity lifestyle. Fans could sometimes get the same buses that the players got. So when their heroes died, it felt like a family member had died. And you saw it in the funerals that were the 10 deep on the pavement. Duncan Edwards, who was the gentle giant, one of our potentially best ever players, cruelly taken down without fulfilling his potential. And there was 50,000 people at his funeral in Dudley. And it kind of sums up the sort of communal mourning that came after this.
Okay, well, you've written about how the Munich tragedy changed the perceptions of Germany and Germans in the press. Now, even though the recent tragedy isn't in a post-war scenario, should we be surprised in seeing South America unite in grief?
I don't think so. There's certain things that happen in life that transcend football and that transcend the event that they're involved with. And when it comes to human tragedy, it's nice to see, well, it's wonderful to see things like this where every single club in Brazil was united to support Chapecoense, and it's the same with every single club around the world. And it's just certain occasions like this that make you realise how important human life is, and it just makes you forget about the football, forget about any rivalry, and just think about the actual human loss that's happened. And that's what you're seeing with the outpouring of grief here.
Okay, Sam, thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Game. Right, we're going to take a break here on Beyond the Game. We have plenty more on the show, but first, a tribute to the eternal champions.
Hoje, acordamos com novo desafio, pois a vida nos deu uma missão diferente. Nossos guerreiros viraram heróis e eternizaram suas vidas em uma batalha que fez o mundo parar. A partida de hoje não tem um apito final. Juntos somos mais que 11. Ó glorioso verde que se expande entre os estados, tu és sempre um esplendor. Nas alegrias e nas horas mais difíceis. Meu furacão, tu és sempre um vencedor.
Off the field, it's been 2 weeks since the first football players came forward over fresh allegations of historic child abuse in the English game. Since then, more players have come forward, more allegations or investigations have been opened, and as Darry Priest reports, the scale of the scandal is only just starting to be realised.
It's the most troubling scandal to hit English football. Accusations that young boys were sexually abused have dominated headlines for the last 2 weeks. But now the scandal appears to have gotten even worse, as a club is accused of covering it up. British newspaper The Daily Telegraph reported that Premier League club Chelsea paid off a victim at some point in the past 3 years, after he threatened to go public with allegations. The accused employee, Eddie Heath, was chief scout for the club between 1968 and 79. Chelsea have released a statement saying they've retained an external law firm to carry out an investigation concerning an employee at the club in the 1970s who is now deceased. On Sunday, the FA said it had appointed an independent review to examine all allegations of child sex abuse at football clubs.
I don't know if there's a covered up or not. I really don't know. I think institutionally, all organisations in the old days used to protect themselves by keeping quiet and closing ranks. That's completely inappropriate and unacceptable today, which is why we've had an independent-led inquiry.
On Tuesday, former Crewe Alexandra youth coach Barry Bennell was charged with 8 historic offences against a boy under the age of 14. Bennell has previously been convicted of sexual abuse against young boys on 3 separate occasions. But if the new accusations against Chelsea are found to be true, the scandal would be much bigger than an individual acting alone. What initially appeared to be allegations against one man quickly spread to include a number of clubs in the north of England. Now the scandal has widened with even more clubs implicated and allegations of cover-ups. At least 13 police forces are now examining past sex abuse cases within football, and a helpline set up by children's charity NSPCC has already received hundreds of calls in relation. For now, the full scale of the scandal remains an unknown, but many are fearing that the worst is yet to come.
Now, with the latest developments on the story, we have TRT World correspondent Simon McGregor-Wood, who joins us live from London. Simon, this scandal is just going to get worse and worse, isn't it?
It's got that kind of feeling. Every day, you wake up and there's something new on the radio, a different newspaper has a different angle, a different exclusive, as we saw, on Thursday with the Daily Telegraph and this latest accusation with Chelsea Football Club. And I think what we will expect is more of the same. It's actually up to 14 regional police forces up and down the country now actively investigating accusations. Apparently they've totally received up to 250 individual complaints from individuals. Up to 20 named footballers have come forward with the similar allegations that first surfaced 2 weeks ago. So I don't think this is over yet. There is a sense here it is just mushrooming.
Well, these latest allegations against Chelsea Football Club are quite worrying in that it moves away from the allegations of individuals, but to the club itself, the fact that they are possibly involved in a cover-up.
Yeah, I think that's the new and more worrying or an additionally worrying development in this. The implication is that as recently as 3 years ago, when the hierarchy of that football club, Chelsea Football Club, was very much still in place today, was trying to hush up something that took place in the 70s. Eddie Heath, the man at the centre of the allegations, was the Chelsea youth team coach up until 1979. Clearly this individual who came forward apparently was prompted to do so by the furore over the Jimmy Savile sexual abuse scandal that broke a few years ago. And it appears that one Premier League football club, a very big club, Chelsea, saw fit to try and hush it up. And I think the big question is, has this happened anywhere else? Is football trying to keep a lid on this scandal?
OK, we will find out. But there are a number of active investigations happening right now between the FA, the clubs and the police. But what should we expect to happen from now on?
Well, clearly, I think the fans of the football game have been taken aback. Football in this country is held up as a hugely successful family entertainment business, a hugely successful commercial sporting enterprise. This kind of stuff is really bad for football. There are young kids up and down the country desperate to get into the game, given the fame and the riches it promises. The Football Association and the police have to make sure that everything is done to get to the bottom of this, to clean it up, to make sure justice is delivered to those who have been abused in the past, and to make absolutely sure it's not happening now. But this is very damaging to the game.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Simon. Right, let's lighten things up a little bit now and to golf, and Tiger Woods is looking to make his return to the game. The 14-time major champion is preparing for his return to competitive golf at this week's Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas. Woods hasn't played on the PGA Tour since August 2015 after 2 back operations and a slump to get this 879th in the world. Right, that's it for today's show. Thank you very much for watching Beyond the Game. See you next time. Bye.